Hello there. Welcome in to a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, of course, is sponsored by Diversus Health. Mental health and well-being for all, and yes, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I would love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You could call or text them in. You could also tweet at me at Gingerly Tweets. I want to talk about the hockey last night, if that's what you want to call what we saw between the Panthers and the Oilers. But I will start with the breaking news of the afternoon, and that is that the Broncos are signing J.K. Dobbins after all. 1 year, $5.25 million deal, according to Tom Pelissero of NFL Media. So Dobbins left without a deal, spent 2 days, left, and then now they announce it. A little bit weird. Did Sean Payton have a change of heart? Did J.K. Dobbins have to sleep on it? Did they give him an offer lower than he was hoping for? If you're looking to Sean Payton, at least today, for any explanation, you're not going to get it, because since it's only a report, he's not going to comment on it. And that's exactly what he said today at Broncos OTAs. So, or mandatory minicamp, excuse me. Calendar has turned. Mandatory minicamp. Maybe we'll find out tomorrow why they allowed J.K. Dobbins to leave after whining and dining him for 2 days, only to call him back and say, yeah, we're going to sign you. But that's really secondary to what kind of an impact J.K. Dobbins will have on the Denver Broncos. Now, essentially, you could say he's replacing Javonte Williams. You could say that about RJ Harvey, maybe. But let's just compare Javonte Williams to J.K. Dobbins. And there's no doubt, I won't bog you down in the numbers, but 60 more carries, 400 more yards, 5 more touchdowns. If they were looking for an upgrade over Javonte Williams, they found it, based on what J.K. Dobbins did last year. Now, I've been saying this when it comes to J.K. Dobbins. He has had a bad history with injuries. He missed part of last season because of injury. So this has to be viewed as a low risk and not necessarily high reward. I think expectations need to be tempered, especially when you consider that Sean Payton's view of his running back room is there's not one guy. And J.K. Dobbins fits that very well. If you think back to, well, either of his healthier seasons, his 2020 with Baltimore and last year with the Chargers, he wasn't the lead back. He was sharing it, coincidentally, with Gus Edwards. But also in 2020, they had Lamar Jackson rushing for 1,000 yards. So J.K. Dobbins has never been this game-changing bell cow back. But that's not what the Broncos are looking for. Sean Payton wants a specific skill set, and he wants to be able to utilize multiple running backs in order to improve this Broncos run game, which was, if we're being honest, quite bad last year. Mediocre at best. J.K. Dobbins' best skill set is that he protects in the pass game, which was the apprehension, or not the apprehension to letting Javonte Williams go. It was probably the reason why we saw as much Javonte Williams as we did last year. And George Payton said it around the draft, it's very hard to project rookie running backs in terms of pass protection. So if you're looking for RJ Harvey, even if you're looking for Audric Estime at this point, still a young back, Jaleel McLaughlin certainly isn't that. So right away, J.K. Dobbins fills a very specific role and a necessary one. Because we could talk about the Broncos' rush offense and the improvement that it could have and what that would mean for the Denver Broncos. But ultimately, what will determine the Broncos taking that next step is Bo Nix. His development. You are in a conference with the three best quarterbacks on planet Earth. Okay, that's not a lot of upward mobility within the conference. Right? And you're going to have to go up against them in order to achieve what I think is the goal in the grand scheme of things for Sean Payton, which is to win a Super Bowl. You're going to have to go through those guys. Not to mention Joe Burrow. I'm not out on CJ Stroud yet. This is a stacked conference in terms of quarterbacks. And the Broncos aren't going to ground and pound their way to a Super Bowl. Ultimately, it becomes what Bo Nix can do. And having a back in J.K. Dobbins that can help protect him so he can make plays down the field is good. I would say that that's the most important aspect of what J.K. Dobbins is going to bring to the table. But trust me, the Broncos are not going to win a Super Bowl unless Bo Nix is at least butting up against the tier that Burrow, Allen, Lamar, and Mahomes are in. If he's butting up against it, then other things like defense, coaching, all of these other things come into play, and maybe it can put the Broncos over the top. But we're still in the stage now with Bo Nix where Sean Payton is providing scaffolding for him. Right? And it started before even Bo Nix arrived. Before they even knew they were going to take Bo Nix. They reinforced the offensive line. Okay? That way you could put Bo Nix in there and he could feel protected. And then you have the support system with Sean Payton. At least a commitment to the running game, even though it was pretty ineffective last year. They still committed to it. They didn't, outside of really the Seattle game, week 1, I thought Sean Payton for pretty much the entire season either did right by Bo by not asking him to do too much or actually at times asked him to do less than I thought he should do. There's only one game last year where I'm like, Sean Payton's asking Bo Nix to do way too much. And that was his first game ever in the NFL. So it can't lose the plot here. Can't lose what stage of the game the Broncos are in right now. It's still about developing Bo Nix. And you bring in a running back who's good in pass protection, that helps Bo Nix. You bring in, just based on last year, I don't even have to get, go crazy with the projections. He's better than Javonte Williams was last year. And I think that's a fair expectation to put on him for this year. You're always going to worry about the injuries. It's probably why J.K. Dobbins was still unemployed up until this afternoon. But when he's on the field, he is clearly the best running back that Sean Payton has had since he's been in Denver. And if he can help the running game out to some degree, that also takes pressure off of Bo Nix as he continues to develop. Taking it more into this year. right? Bo Nix's development will not be done this year, nor will the Denver Broncos compete for a Super Bowl. And I'm sorry if that is news to you on June 10th. The Broncos are not winning the Super Bowl this year. However, they are looking to take the next step. They are looking to get closer. So how do you do that? I think the best way possible is within the realm of possibility is for the Denver Broncos to be the 5th seed in the AFC. And here's what I mean by that. I'm not buying that Denver topples Kansas City atop the AFC West. Could they beat them this year? Absolutely, they could beat them. But they're not going to finish with a better record than the Kansas City Chiefs. So they're getting one of the top 4 seeds. So if you don't win your division, guess what? You're at least 5th. Now you're looking at the LA Chargers. You're looking at the Cincinnati Bengals, and you're looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers, who just signed Aaron Rodgers. And what you're saying is not getting carried away with expectation that J.K. Dobbins is going to be the best rusher in the NFL. But again, Sean Payton working within the margins. They've opened up their margins just a little bit in the run game because this is a clear upgrade, and I like R.J. Harvey, just maybe not as much as in Amarion Hampton or some of the other backs. But you improve the running game to some degree. You've fortified the defense by bringing in Greenlaw and drafting Barron and signing Hufanga. Contract aside for Nick Bonito and Zach Allen, that's a longer-term thing. You got him for this year. You got the offensive line. You brought in Evan Ingram, and you add it all up. Can you get past LA? There was a negligible difference between those two teams in the standings last year. So could all of these moves culminating with J.K. Dobbins push them past LA? Okay, now you're looking at the 6th seed. Now you got to battle with what's going on in the AFC North, which is going to be a very difficult division, much like the AFC West. And if the Broncos can find a way to have a better record than the second-place team behind Baltimore in the AFC North, now you're the 5 seed. Now you're going on the road to presumably take on the AFC South winner, the winner of one of the worst divisions in football. And you give yourself a chance. More so than if you had to run up against Josh Allen again, or go into Baltimore, or even go into Arrowhead in the playoffs. That's the path to that next step, where the Denver Broncos go from kind of just being happy to be here, making an appearance after so long out of the playoffs, to threatening to win a playoff game, and then taking their chances against Lamar, Josh Allen, or Mahomes. So Sean Payton's looking for the division, which is where he should be looking, by the way. You should be setting your sights on Kansas City. That's the easiest path. You win your division, then you're hosting a first-round playoff game. You're one of the top 4 seeds. But that might be a little unrealistic to win the division. So then here's the other path, where if you can get in a matchup against the AFC South, then you have a chance to win, and there is progress going into what will be a huge third year. But not to go too far away from J.K. Dobbins, but that's what he's adding to the mix. You upgrade with Hufanga, you upgrade with Greenlaw, you upgrade with Barron, you upgrade. Like, are any of these massive upgrades from their predecessor? I would say Evan Ingram is the closest to that. But you can't argue Hufanga and Greenlaw if healthy, Barron if he gets his legs under him in year one, Ingram, Dobbins are all upgrades over their predecessors. And that's how Sean Payton has been building this thing. Getting room within the margins. to be just a little bit better and a little bit better than they were last year is enough to put them in a much better spot going into the postseason than 1 year ago, where we all knew that it wasn't going to end well. Arrowhead, Highmark, or is it still called M&T in Baltimore? So that's the vision here. Is J.K. Dobbins going to completely change the Denver Broncos into a potent rushing attack? I don't think so. But this was probably the weakest aspect of their team last year. Weakest, whether it's pass defense, rush defense, pass offense, rush offense. They're a little bit better here, and they should be. That can make the difference between the Broncos going up against one of these juggernaut quarterbacks that Bo Nix isn't ready to beat in a playoff round, and then going up against a Trevor Lawrence, a CJ Stroud, who you could buy that. You could believe that Bo Nix could be one of those players. And then with that confidence leads to year 3, big year for Bo Nix. He's supposed to pop, and then the Broncos are in contention. That's at least the vision, I would imagine, from Sean Payton, and we'll see how it all plays out. But J.K. Dobbins, another one of these upgrades to the Broncos roster as they try to just get a little bit better in every area to be able to surpass, most notably L.A., but also contend with what is in the AFC North. I'll take your thoughts on the signing of J.K. Dobbins, 719-247-1313. You could call or text it in. Coming up next, the Oilers, they really should stick to who they are. Father's Day is coming up on Sunday. Treat your dad to a $5,000 whatever basement, barbecue, backyard upgrade. Pop gets to pick. Head to extrasports1300.com to enter this national contest for your chance to win $5,000 for your top pop. Contest sponsored locally by Bullseye Plumbing, Heating, and Air. You've scored a bullseye, the best you can get. That game 3, and I'll put game in quotation marks. I don't know if it was so much a hockey game as a farce would probably be the word that I would use. I used it on social media last night. Connor McDavid would probably call it a gong show. That's hockey parlance. It wasn't much of a game last night. 35 penalties between the two teams for 140 penalty minutes. That's the 4th most all time. And this is supposed to be a more wide open, less physical brand of hockey than in previous times. Maybe not Gretzky's time, but 4th most penalty minutes all time for a playoff game. It's a lot. And then the Panthers win in a laugher 6-1. When that game got to 3-1 early in the second period, and Chris Knobloch, the head coach of the Oilers, said as much, they kind of knew it was over, that they weren't going to come back when Florida went up 3-1. So with that, Edmonton clearly decided we're getting something out of this game. We're not going to win, but we're going to take something. And that's when it got ugly. And here's the thing. If you're a hockey fan, you know this. Hockey goonery is actually kind of an art form. It's not just, hey, trying to pick fights with everybody on the ice. Okay, there's a time and a place for it. There's a subtlety to it at times, and Edmonton just doesn't, they're not built this way. So they don't know how to do it right. Here's Evander Kane after the game crying foul about what he perceives as a double standard between the two teams.
The game obviously got out of hand at the end there. That stuff is going to happen. You know, you look at some of the calls and whatnot. Obviously, some of them are frustrating. They seem to get away with it more than we do. You know, it's tough to find the line. It's they're doing just as much stuff as we are. You know, it was 4-4 at the end of it, and then it gets out of hand, and there seems to be a little bit more attention in our group.
Here's the thing, and Evander Kane's not completely wrong in his assessment, because let's be honest, Florida has Sam Bennett, they have Aaron Ekblad, they have Matthew Tkachuk, they have Brad Marchand now. They're a bunch of goons. They are agitators, whatever you want to call them. So Evander Kane's not wrong when he says that Florida does things. But if you watch the game last night, there's only one team that you notice doing anything. Again, the subtlety of this kind of stuff. Edmonton, one, was obvious what they were doing. I mean, Jake Wallman is spraying the Panther bench with his water bottle while they're doing a live shot on Brian Boucher in between the glass on TNT. Like, you don't think people are going to notice that? You don't think when you pin Matthew Tkachuk's arms behind his back and allow your teammate to start punching him that we're not going to notice? So it's two things with the Oilers. One, it's that some of the things they did last night were so egregious that it's hard for anybody to not go, Edmonton's the one that's doing all of this stuff. I know that they're not the only ones doing that stuff, but they're the only ones you notice because, again, it is not their identity. They don't know how to do this right. And the only two guys that really take part in this stuff, well, Jake Wallman, throw him into the mix. Corey Perry and Evander Kane are also two of the most unlikable hockey players on planet Earth. There have been scientific studies. When Florida does this kind of stuff, one, they're not so egregious with it because they know how to be subtle about it. But it's almost like it's likable when they do it. I'm not saying I agree with everything that they do, and at times they've crossed the line. But there's an acceptance of, okay, this is what Florida is. Okay, they're not going to be over the top about it. It's got to be maddening to play against them, but as a viewer, it doesn't ruin my experience. Like when Edmonton does this kind of stuff. So when Florida does it, and I get this is kind of unfair to Edmonton, but it's the way it is. When Florida does it, it's their identity, it's who they are. It's kind of why if you like Florida, you like them. Edmonton, they're not that team. They're not. They've hired Evander Kane and Corey Perry to play those roles, but those are two players that nobody in the NHL likes. And they routinely cross the line. So it just, the message to the Oilers after Game 3 is just stop. Stop trying to out-Panther the Panthers, out-rat the Rats. You're not going to be able to do it. You're going to get caught every time. And most of the stuff that you did was so egregious because you don't know how to do it right that you're going to get called for it every single time. I understand in order to win in the playoffs, and it's part of the reason why Florida has the potential to become an NHL dynasty and why they've been here the last 3 years is because they are built for playoff hockey. Slower paced, less open space, more physicality. They're built for it. Edmonton is built not so much that way, right? They're a high skill, super speedy, finesse in many ways hockey team. And they have to, and the Avalanche have been through this before. You have to definitely move a little bit down the spectrum and get closer to what Florida is, but you can't go so far that you're almost cosplaying as your opponent. You got to have a little bit of grit, a little bit of that sandpaper. Right? Like, I never would stump for my team to sign either Evander Kane or Corey Perry. But I get the thought process. Okay, we got to bring Jake Wallman, another one. We got to bring those kind of guys into our club in order to win in the postseason. And look, they've been in the Stanley Cup final back-to-back years. They're doing a good job. But this Florida team is so much in their head and so far under their skin that they just completely abandon what actually makes them, what part of them is advantageous to winning. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. As good as the Panthers are, they don't have anyone that's even close to as good as those two guys. It's a delicate balance, and last night the Oilers completely lost it. Completely lost it. Now, I don't want to make it into more than what it is. It could very well just be that game. That's why Game 4 on Thursday is going to be so fascinating. Because it's entirely possible that the Oilers can flush that game, that they lost their heads, they're not going to do that again, and we're in for a long series. Or you could have seen a team completely unraveling, and that means Edmonton is done in this series. Mathematically, they're not done. Mentally, they could be done. That's a possibility. It was so bad last night. So bad. The way this team conducted themselves. That at times I was wondering if Edmonton was completely coming undone and they cannot be put back together. But that's what Game 4 is for. How Edmonton responds tomorrow night is going to say everything. If they respond the right way, bring a little bit of physicality to the table that is required this time of year, but not stepping over the line and allowing the fact that they have two of the three best players on planet Earth on their side, win the day. That's ultimately how they're going to win this series. Not by becoming the Florida Panthers, but by being the best version of the Edmonton Oilers, which is pretty damn good. But last night was a circus. It was a fiasco. And Edmonton has no one to blame but themselves. They lost their heads. They gave up. And that's the crazy thing. When you have Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, a 2-goal deficit should be nothing. I don't care if it's the Florida Panthers. Put Draisaitl and McDavid together on the same line and have at it. A 2-goal deficit early in the second period, we're waving the white flag if we're Edmonton? You shouldn't feel that way. Florida should have to have you by like 4 goals for you to feel like you're completely out of it. You took this team to a Game 7 last year. They're not head and shoulders above you, but they're better in certain ways that ultimately won them that series last year. But you still have McDavid and you still have Draisaitl, and at 3-1, that's maybe the most concerning thing, is that Knobloch's admitting after the game that they mentally were toast after it was 3-1 early in the second period. Didn't they just, in Game 1, come back from a similar circumstance? Last night, if you're an Oilers fan or someone that put your hard-earned money on the Oilers to win this series, last night should be incredibly concerning to you. Incredibly concerning. And how they come out in Game 4 tomorrow night will say everything about whether last night was just last night or whether we look back and say the Florida Panthers won the Stanley Cup final in Game 3. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Game 3 last night. Off day for the NBA Finals, but don't worry. The real NBA season that most people are, in all honesty, looking forward to is going to be here quicker than you even think, according to those in the know. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Celebrate your father by experiencing the reigning champions Switchbacks FC at Widener Field this Saturday, June 14th. They will take on Oakland Roots. Be there at 6 p.m. as the first 2,000 fans through the gates will get a limited edition Switchbacks canvas bag. And then, yes, of course, a fireworks display that Dad will love following the match. Tickets almost sold out. Get yours at switchbacksfc.com. So we were told a couple of weeks ago by Shams Charania that this is going to be one of the most active NBA off seasons we have ever seen. And at the time, there were names like Durant and Giannis that were potentially on the move, in addition to the very real reality facing so many teams, including the Denver Nuggets, when it comes to the second luxury tax apron. Could Boston be trying to remove a Jenga piece from their tower and still keep it upright? Well, now Brian Windhorst is saying that all of this is going to get going quickly. Like, as soon as OKC finishes off Indiana, we're going to start to get a lot of movement. Because you don't want to be, and this is me saying this, not Brian Windhorst, you don't want to be left holding the bag at the end of this when everyone's trying to be proactive and make these moves to cut down on the tax they have to pay or get in on the Durant-Giannis sweepstakes. Well, two things. One, Giannis was recently quoted as saying that he very much looks forward to getting back to the NBA Finals soon with the Milwaukee Bucks. So, one of the reasons why this was going to be such a crazy offseason may be not a thing. Giannis may not be traded, which is good news for the Phoenix Suns, because now Kevin Durant becomes the hottest commodity, driving the price up. Bad news for the Denver Nuggets. And now it's Durant. Could he go to San Antonio? Could he go to Houston? Before, it was the loser of the Giannis sweepstakes would then set their sights on Kevin Durant. Now, 37-year-old Kevin Durant is the piece that all of these up-and-coming teams with cap space, with assets, are looking to bring in to put themselves over the top, get them to the next level. And I know we've been through this before with Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant is still a big enough name that wondering where he ends up is a big story. Like, Kevin Durant can still play. And if he goes to Houston, if he goes to San Antonio, it'll be just what those teams need to make. I mean, if he ends up in Houston, we could be talking about that being the next team to come out of the West, because we've had 7 different NBA champions in 7 years, but we've also had a lot of new teams go to the NBA Finals. Now, I would feel more sure about that proclamation if it was Giannis that they were bringing in. But Kevin Durant on a well-put-together roster, which the Rockets have, that is just needing a go-to scorer, that could be exactly what they need. Now it's just a matter of what can they hang on to. Because the idea that they're going to part with Alperen Şengün for Giannis, and then they would turn around and do that for Kevin Durant, I'm not doing that. So it's not going to be as much as the Bucks would get conceivably for Giannis, but it's more than what Phoenix was looking at before, when Kevin Durant was kind of the consolation prize for the teams that were in the Giannis sweepstakes. Again, if this quote is factual and if this is Giannis saying, I'm not asking out. Now, the Bucks could still trade him. The Bucks could still say, look, it's in our best interest, but it looks like we're trending before we even get to the offseason to where Giannis is not on the table. But I do expect there to be a lot of player movement because there are just so many teams that are up against it financially that they're going to be looking to move some pieces. But here was the other thing I was thinking about when I heard Brian Windhorst today on ESPN. You know, all this stuff is saying it's going to be one of the most, what did Sham say, most craziest off seasons we've ever seen. Windhorst is saying it's going to start as soon as it possibly can. Depending on what we see last night, Oklahoma City may be just about ready. It may be a matter of when, not if anymore, that OKC wins the NBA Finals, and we could still be looking at being done with the NBA Finals here pretty soon. So I'm thinking about all this stuff, the importance of the offseason, how much movement there's going to be, how quickly it's going to happen, and the fact that OKC may have turned this thing back by winning game 2 to where they're going to just now run roughshod over Indiana, and the Nuggets don't have a full-time general manager. Where's the announcement? And I know Ben Tenzer is doing that job right now on an interim basis, but once it comes time to call up teams, I mean, we got the draft coming up here in a couple weeks. I know that the Nuggets don't have a draft pick, but are they trying to get back into the draft? I mean, are they planning on doing anything, or are they just going to sit out? Because we could debate all day long whether they have what is necessary to make a big move or they have to make a bunch of tiny moves, but they need somebody to do that. And remember that ESPN piece that came out shortly after Tim Connolly became the general manager of the Denver Nuggets, where basically anonymous GMs were saying that they didn't take the guy seriously that was calling him up. Well, what do you think they're going to do when it's, hello, this is Ben Tenzer, interim general manager of the Denver Nuggets? What's their first question going to be? Are you authorized to make these decisions? All this is coming up soon. And every indication is it's going to be quite nutty. Where's the announcement? And it's a balance. I understand nobody would have been satisfied if Josh Kroenke would have went to the podium the same day that he named David Adelman the full-time head coach if he would have named Ben Tenzer. Because I think collectively the hope is that he's going to seek somebody with a track record, that he's going to go big game hunting, whatever that looks like when it comes to finding general managers. So nobody would have liked it if he would have made a decision 2 days after the season ended like he did with David Adelman. But also there's this other end of the spectrum, which is the offseason is going to start here very soon. If some business is not being secretly conducted as we speak, and the Nuggets have a guy calling up other teams that may not even have the job by the time the offseason actually begins. So I think by the end of the week, is that fair? I mean, shouldn't we get that piece of business off the table and fully focus on this offseason? I think that's fair. But I think this is all pointing, the longer it goes, the more it's going to be Ben Tenzer. Because then Josh Kroenke will be able to sit up there and say we did an exhaustive search. We we spent all this time, we tried to figure it out, and we just kept coming back to Ben Tenzer. Every day that goes by, I believe even more that they're just going to lift his interim tag as well. Which would then signal to me that don't expect the Nuggets to do anything. But as I've said, like, Ben Tenzer's got to be the GM for the next year and the year after that. Like, Christian Braun has an extension coming up. Jokic has one right now that he can sign this summer. Christian Braun's getting ready to get paid. Michael Porter's deal is a couple years away from just expiring. Like, maybe this offseason there's not much work to be done. And maybe it'd be somewhat okay for people that Ben Tenzer's the interim becomes a full-time general manager. I mean, if the Nuggets aren't going to make any moves and it's all about internal development. But it's not going to sit well when the Nuggets have some money or the Nuggets run into that second round wall again. But the longer you wait, the offseason's coming. I think we're about due for a decision here. Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. What is becoming a daily occurrence on this show is a new Michael Porter mock trade just dropped. There is an old one that's now coming back, and it's this 3-team deal in which the Lakers get their big man in Nick Claxton from Brooklyn. The Nuggets unload Michael Porter and get Dalton Connect and Rui Hachimura and the 10th overall pick in the draft. And they give up Michael Porter to Brooklyn, and I think the Lakers send Brooklyn a second-round pick. And this one got Nuggets Twitter all hot and bothered because you're getting a shooter in Dalton Connect, not as proven, but certainly has that capability. Then you get another depth piece in Rui Hachimura, and you get back into the draft at number 10, because that's maybe one of the other flaws of Calvin Booth's execution of his vision is that they keep banking on guys drafted in the 20s. Like, I know they can't do a whole lot about it where they're drafting, but we talk about how shallow the talent pool is in these NBA drafts, and the Nuggets are relying on plucking hidden gems at 25 and 28 and 29. I think that's kind of part of the problem with this vision is you keep relying on picks in the 20s. This isn't the NFL. Guys in the 20s might as well be second-round picks. And I know there's one second-round pick that people think very highly of in Colorado, but the lightning doesn't usually strike twice. If the Nuggets could all of a sudden get into the lottery, now they're maybe adding a young player worth developing, worth pouring into, and worth believing that they can provide the depth that the Nuggets need. So I understand, and Laker fans are thrilled because the one thing they need is a big man. They need rim protection, and they'll get it in Nick Claxton. But once again, I'm raining on the parade. What is Brooklyn getting out of this? Nick Claxton's not old. Like, the next good Brooklyn Nets team can't have Nick Claxton on it? Like, I just feel like with some of these mock trades, These teams are getting thrown in because they don't have a fan base to cry out, right? If the Nuggets were to get fleeced in one of these mock trades, or especially the Lakers, and they were the teams that had just given away stuff, the authors of these blogs would come under fire because they're a passionate fan base. They're a large fan base. But Brooklyn, I don't think I've ever met a Nets fan in my life. So it's like Utah is giving away stuff and the Nets are giving away stuff. And I'm sorry, I got to speak up for them. If I'm the Brooklyn Nets, why would I do this deal? To get Michael Porter, who played with one arm, in addition to a bunch of other maladies he was dealing with in the NBA playoffs, and I'm giving away a big man. I'm giving the Lakers exactly what they're looking for, and I'm giving the Denver Nuggets the one thing they're looking for, more depth, and giving them depth in the form of a three-point shooter in Dalton Connect. I'm sorry, like, from the Nuggets perspective, yeah, who do I have to talk to get this deal done? Even if it helps the Lakers, I'm okay with that. Nick Claxton isn't handling Nikola Jokic in a 7-game series. Let them get their big man. I love this trade for the Nuggets. Love Dalton Connect. Rui Hachimura is fine. Probably better than what they have coming off the bench right now, certainly. And you get a top 10 pick in this year's draft, at least to play with, if not to take somebody. Now, all of a sudden, you got a 10th pick. Maybe somebody would also like Peyton Watson and move up a few spots. I don't know. But the Nuggets aren't even in the draft game right now. And they go from having nothing to having the 10th pick. Yeah, sign me up. Where do I need to sign in order to make this happen? But from the Brooklyn perspective, why in the world would they do this? Coming up next, more on the Broncos. After all, signing J.K. Dobbins, what to expect, and how much does he raise the ceiling for the Denver Broncos? Sports on a Tuesday. Appreciate you watching the show on our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300. No E on Extra. If you'd like to be a part of the show by texting or calling in, feel free. 719-247-1313 is that number, or you can reach out via social media to me. The best place is probably X at Gingerly Tweets. The news of the day. J.K. Dobbins will be a Denver Bronco after all. They signed him to a one-year deal. This, to me, is almost a zero-risk move. Zero risk. What's the downside? I hear people talking about, well, what about Audric Estime? What about him? What about Audric Estime? Would he be the first player drafted in, what was he, the fourth round to be supplanted by a veteran in the NFL? Like, who's to say that Audric Estime was ever going to be the player Broncos fans hoped he would be? Like, this idea that J.K. Dobbins will be taking, reps away from some of these younger guys. Okay, well, then beat him out. Like, the Broncos, I understand that they still need to develop guys, right? They can't bail on all of their young guys, but you've seen it with the moves they made this offseason. It's time to, really start get going now. And if you can bring in a veteran like J.K. Dobbins, even if he takes away some reps, look at it the other way. Maybe it's what Audric Estime needs to motivate him. Right? Beat the guy out. Bryce Drew versus Bo Callahan on draft day. Beat him out. I guess that was the other way around. That was the strength and conditioning coach telling the veteran to beat out the young player. But you understand what I'm saying. Competition is healthy. Competition is good. And let's not act like the Broncos have the entire fate of their franchise resting on the shoulders of Audric Estime. He has some things that you like. Clearly, Sean Payton has a great affinity for him, but Sean Payton's also the guy that just brought in J.K. Dobbins. So you don't love him that much. Competition is a good thing. And the Broncos don't have premium draft capital or a large dollar amount tied up in anyone in that running back room. To me, if I'm looking at it, obviously you're not bailing on RJ Harvey after just drafting him. But in terms of where these guys come in from, you got one guy that's on a 1-year, $5.25 million contract now in J.K. Dobbins. You have one running back that you took in the fourth round last year. You have another one you took midway through this year's draft. You didn't use a first-round pick on him. You have Jaleel McLaughlin, who's found money. And then you got, practice squad guys. What are we worried? Why are people worried about that J.K. Dobbins is going to take away reps from these running backs? None of these guys come in. If Omarion Hampton or Ashton Genty were on this football team, then okay, we can have a conversation, because those guys you're bringing in to be the dude, and you need to ramp them up quickly. All these other guys, I think Sean Payton could cut anybody in his running back room tomorrow and would not lose a wink of sleep over it. And if we're looking at young players, and I talked about this with Von Miller, the idea of bringing him in, there are players, just comparing the running back room versus the pass rusher room. Right? Bringing in a veteran like a Von Miller would take reps and hinder the development of somebody like Jonah Ellis, who I actually think can really be something. So that's really what it comes down to. How much do you believe in what already exists in that room? To me, I don't want a veteran on his last legs coming in to a room with, a star on the rise in Nick Bonito, a young player in Jonah Ellis that I think can be an impact player at this level, Jonathan Cooper, who you just signed. Like, it's a crowded room, and it's a crowded room of younger guys that still have room to develop, and I think they can develop into something good. They already have in many ways. You juxtapose that with the running back room, and it's like RJ Harvey, because he's the new guy. He's the new rookie, and the Broncos were running back was one of the primary positions they were looking for. So RJ Harvey is maybe someone that you have high hopes for. Everybody else in that running back room, like, no offense, they could all be gone tomorrow. Like, and I don't think anybody would be saying, well, there goes the Broncos' chance at a great year rushing the football. They were mediocre last year. I don't think that J.K. Dobbins is going to completely transform that room, but I also don't think he's taking reps away from anybody that desperately needs them, that the Broncos have a lot invested in. And you know what I have to go on, who I have in my corner? Sean Payton. So if it's in Sean we trust, and everything Sean does turns to gold and needs to be beyond questioning, why is this move being questioned? Why is this the one? Why do you draw the line at a fourth-round running back in Audric Estime? Like, no, you can't bring in anybody that would be above him. Why? Sean Payton is telling you they need more in that running back room. His word is gospel everywhere else on the roster and on the football field except here. J.K. Dobbins is walking in, health concerns or not, the best running back that the Broncos have, and it's not particularly close. Now, you compare J.K. Dobbins to other running backs across the league, that's a different story. But on this Broncos team, J.K. Dobbins is their best running back. And that has to be part of the calculation from Sean Payton. And look, if he gives Audric Estime a little nudge and Estime really breaks through in this training camp, you sign J.K. Dobbins to a one-year deal. See ya. Sorry it didn't work out. I'm just theorizing here. I don't have any inside information on this. But perhaps the term of the contract was maybe a bit of a hang-up, and that's why J.K. Dobbins got out of Denver without a deal. Maybe he wanted another year of security. And Sean Payton's like, no, we're good with one. Maybe that was the hang-up and why he got out of Denver without a deal. And then agent called around and realized that that's the best he was going to do. This is a good move. Like, I have nothing negative to say about this move by the Denver Broncos. I only will push back anyone that thinks that now they're going to be the most potent rushing attack in the NFL. Like, let's keep expectations a little bit lower than that. But J.K. Dobbins walks in as the best running back in the Broncos running back room, and it's time for the Denver Broncos. They're getting to the difficult part now. This is the hard part. In the AFC, moving up, winning a division that isn't the AFC South. Look at the teams, Baltimore, Kansas City, and the Bills. Their reign of terror has been going on a while now, some more than others. Like, credit to Sean Payton for what he's done already. This is where it gets really hard. This is where you got to figure out a way to go from being a nice upstart story, grabbing, this 7th playoff spot, to, well, now we're competing for the division. Now we're trying to win a playoff game. Now we're trying to go even further. Like, this is where it gets really difficult for the Denver Broncos. They need all the help they can get. It's time to go. You got to move the needle a little bit here. And this is the most difficult part of it, pushing through a stacked AFC. This next phase of Sean Payton's rebuild is going to be the most difficult. And I talked about it to start the show. What he's banking on is, I upgraded at safety a little bit of an upgrade to inside linebacker. I got Jade Barron. It's going to give me a little bit of upgrade to the secondary. Get J.K. Dobbins, who's an upgrade to the running back room. And we'll add it all up, and that will get us to where we need to go. That's Sean Payton's calculation. And I get it. I may disagree about where it would ultimately get the Denver Broncos, but I see what Sean Payton is doing, and I think signing J.K. Dobbins is nothing but a good idea. Nothing but a good idea, and you could cut him tomorrow. And cut, again, maybe not R.J. Harvey, but anybody else in that running back room could be cut tomorrow. Doesn't change anything as far as the Denver Broncos are concerned. A couple of your text before we break here. Jason says Dobbins follows Peyton's blueprint. Pierre Thomas copycat. So there's also that, right? We've talked about R.J. Harvey reminding people of Alvin Kamara, and we've heard Pat Bryant reminding people of Michael Thomas, and now he's Evan Ingram reminding him of Jimmy Graham. Like, this is what Sean Payton is doing. He's turning the Denver Broncos into the New Orleans Saints. The skill sets he wants to utilize at certain positions. I mean, here's the thing, and you know this as well as I do, Jason. Pierre Thomas, when he was at his best, he was really good. I don't know when J.K. Dobbins is going to be that. But it's the kind of running back that Sean Payton wants to add to the room, and it allows him to do some of the same things offensively that he did in New Orleans. Jason adds, if the offensive line does their job, expect all running backs and nicks to take big steps forward. That's actually the least of my concerns. I mean, you're absolutely right, but I'm not, and I'm not saying that you're concerned about it, but I'm not. I think the offensive line is probably the position group that has the fewest question marks around it. I mean, even the secondary, which has the chance to be awesome, has some question marks. Barron's a rookie. Last snapshots we got of Riley Moss wasn't pretty. Still some questions about him. Hufanga with the health. You know, is he going to be healthy? And even the pass rush group. Benito's still young. Is he that guy? Top of the market pass rusher type guy? Jonah Ellis, does he show a little bit more? But I go through all of this. I look at the offensive line. I'm like, they're good. I'm good. Don't need to worry about them. And that's part of it too, where you can, I think, if the Broncos get this right with either Harvey, or maybe they're right about Estime, or maybe they're right about J.K. Dobbins, like the belief around the league is that as long as they get a competent, consistent running back, that offensive line is going to get them to where they want to go. That offensive line is going to boost it. And you think about, Garrett Bowles has always been a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. Mike McGlinchey came from San Francisco. There's a road grader. Ben Powers from Baltimore, where they like to run the football. We know what Quinn Meinertz is all about. Like, that's also part of the equation here. Don't just look at J.K. Dobbins or R.J. Harvey or Audric Estime. Look at the offensive line of the Denver Broncos, and it's reasonable to think that whatever these guys are, they can be a little bit better behind this offensive line. Of all the position groups and all the personnel on the Denver Broncos, as far as if they do their job this season, then the Broncos will do X, Y, and Z. I'll bank on this Broncos offensive line. Everywhere else I can bring up questions. This offensive line, they're good to go. This from the 719, Alfred Williams said you have to pay Benito, much more important to pay him and not Zach Allen. What are your thoughts? And Tom adds 13 and a half sacks is really good, Ryan. 100%. Now, I'll agree with Alfred Williams 1,000% on the Zach Allen. I said this leading up to the draft. Like, I thought that maybe the guy who's having a contract dispute now with the Cincinnati Bengals would be a great fit to replace Zach Allen. I am not in the camp that you pay Zach Allen top of market. I think you try to find somebody to replace him. Nick Benito, on the other hand, no, that should be money well spent. But let's be honest. It's been 1 year. It's been 1 year of Nick Benito being this good, and he was terrific. But you can't say that you're 1,000% sure that Nick Benito is going to be that dude. What does that mean? This is a franchise that had DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller. Is Nick Benito on that kind of a track? I don't think there's enough to go on to say yes. But guys in that position, guys that had that production, you pay them. You do. So, yes, absolutely you pay Nick Benito before you pay Zach Allen. And if you get the deal done with Nick Benito, now maybe there's a little bit of a cost savings. I think what would help the Denver Broncos is if TJ Watt would report to mandatory minicamp and sign his deal so they could be like, yeah, sorry, Nick Benito, you're not getting that. You're not getting what TJ Watt's getting. I am not at all against signing Nick Benito. I think you have to sign him, and because of the position he plays, you're going to have to pay a decent amount of money. You just will. But I think Nick Benito, in what I have seen from him, I think he plays in any scheme. Whereas I wonder about some of these other Broncos pass rushers, and Zach Allen is one of them where, Vance Joseph likes to send so many players, right? It's about the collective. Everybody getting after the quarterback. They blitz more than anybody in the league. Some guys are going to pop up with numbers when you have that kind of a scheme. So what I'm saying is not that Zach Allen is a complete byproduct of it, but is there an argument to be made that you at some point can find a cheaper alternative and not give up a ton of what you lose in Zach Allen? Whereas Nick Benito, if he keeps ascending, which I think he will, it's just a matter of what that ceiling is. there's no finding a cheaper option. Like you lock down that guy's services for as long as you can. So I'm 100% on Big Al's side of things. I'll pay Nick Benito 10 times before I pay Zach Allen once. Take your Broncos thoughts, 719-247-1313. What kind of impact do you think J.K. Dobbins will have on the Denver Broncos? And let's bring the other discussion into it that Tom brought forth. You paying Zach Allen, you paying Nick Benito, or you paying both? Because if you pay both, it's going to get expensive real quick. Take your thoughts on that. More Drive Time Sports after this. The 45th U.S. Senior Open returning to the Broadmoor. See the legends of the game compete June 26th through the 29th at ussenioropen.com. And I will see you there doing the show from the U.S. Senior Open that week. That'll be fun. U.S. Open this week. Now, tomorrow we'll talk more golf and more golf throughout the week. Jay Ritchie, host of Tee to Green Radio, is going to join me. We'll probably do a draft, so be ready for that. We'll do a U.S. Open draft, maybe for some U.S. Senior Open tickets. Do that tomorrow. Everything is subject to change, but golf writer for The Athletic just released a book this week about the year Tiger Woods did the Grand Slam all in 1 year. Remember that? So talk more golf, and then, of course, that ramps up. So with the U.S. Open, or the USGA specifically, I don't love how diabolical they are when it comes to the course conditions. And we're going to see some of that on display when the U.S. Senior Open comes here. It's obviously not quite what they do to the PGA golfers and the LIV golfers at the U.S. Open, but it's pretty diabolical. It'll be about as diabolical of a setup in course conditions as those players will face all year. I don't always love it because I do enjoy my golfers shooting, 5, 10 under par. Like, I do like to see them kind of master the course. So I don't see eye to eye with the USGA and some of that stuff. But what I do love is just the overall, we're going to create chaos. Like, I'm a big fan of that. And they're doing it because they're putting Rory and Bryson in the same group. Awesome. Well done, USGA. So, don't love all of it. I don't know how difficult Oakmont is. We'll get more into it. They had a par 3 today. That was playing, what was it? 289? A par 3? So I went out and golfed. I golfed 18 on the course I grew up on. Shouts to the Rack, Tamarack Golf Club out in Lyman. So I golfed 18. And then on the back nine, I played the whites. And there are some, for me, pretty long par 4s and one long par 3 that give me some trouble. Mostly because I have sworn off the driver in my bag. Have you done this? I'm at this stage. It calls to me like the Green Goblin mask in Spider-Man. It calls to me, but I refuse. I can't, not going to do it because I don't know where the ball is going to go. And I don't know who is going to be harmed. I have no driver control right now, but I've been hitting it very well with one of my fairway woods. So basically that's what I'm teeing off with. So you can imagine a long par 4 is like, it's really difficult for me right now. But a 289 yard par 3. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me with this? USGA? I'd rage quit. Oh, come on. If I stepped up and saw the yardage was 289, it was a par 3. Get out of here with that. Anyway, we'll talk more about all the goodies Oakmont has to offer when Jay Ritchie joins me tomorrow, and we'll talk golf. This is it came across the wire, so to speak, today. Deion Sanders apparently is dealing with a health issue and has been away from Boulder. It's been in Texas. Now, a lot of reporting that I have seen says it's nothing he can't overcome, and Deion Jr. went on YouTube and said, quote, he'll tell you all soon enough what he's been going through, what he went through. When we get back to Boulder, I don't know. I'm waiting until my dad leaves. When he leaves, then I'll go. Until then, I'm sitting here with them. And then added that he's feeling well. So obviously Deion Sanders has had to battle with some illnesses in the past. So anytime this kind of comes up, you wonder, and you know what's going on with him, but it seems like not that it's nothing, but he's like his previous things he's had to deal with, he's pushing through, and I would expect to hear that he's fully prepared to be on the sidelines this season in Boulder. So that's good. I'm glad that the word from Deion Jr. is that he's feeling well. Saw this, speaking of CU, this is going to be an interesting year in Boulder, and one that I hope that Deion Sanders, well, I hope for any season that he's 100% healthy, but this one, it's a big year. It is bordering on make or break territory. And Athlon Sports, as they do every year, they interview a bunch of coaches from around the different conferences and get an anonymous reaction or thought on their rivals within the conference. And as you know, with the so many unnamed sources, the Tyrese Halliburton being named the most overrated player in the NBA, some of the reporting that's gone on regarding Russell Westbrook and Tom Thibodeau, that if you give your sources, allow them to be anonymous, they will likely take a flamethrower to somebody. Now, that was kind of the way the headline was put. Not the flamethrower thing, it would have been good, but like, oh, they rip Deion Sanders. Well, I see the quotes here. It's still a circus. That's not an insult to Deion, but it is. Okay. Doesn't seem too inflammatory. Obviously, that program still has a lot of attention around it. They've turned over a ton in the portal, but they're really going to struggle on the offensive line because of transfers again. Okay? Seems like a level-headed assessment of what the Buffs have on their roster. Travis Hunter is so good, he overshadowed a really good position group in the secondary right now. That is their strength. That seems super nice. Like, I'm reading these, and I don't get the sense that Deion still has to work on getting his colleagues respect. I think what he has done in Boulder has made people sit up and notice. I don't know that CU is necessarily feared in the Big 12, but I think they are respected. And that's kind of the next step in this process, right? First, it was get them back to relevance. Then it was garner them some respect. And I'm reading these things in an article that is trying to be clickbaity and saying that Big 12 coaches are trashing Deion Sanders, and I see level-headed, fair assessments and compliments. So I don't know if there's going to be a lot of the negativity going into the year that there has been the previous two, which I think is a good thing. at some point, you love that Deion Sanders and CU kind of stick out and they garner a lot of attention, and you love that your favorite football team is in the news all the time. But isn't it kind of nice that this year is really just going to be about the football more than anything else? There are no celebrities on this team like Travis and Shador were last year. Deion is still a celebrity, but he's been a couple years in Boulder. Nobody on this roster is coming in with the attention that Shador and Travis did. Like this year, I love the TMZ sports as much as the next guy, but I do find it to be a nice change of pace for CU football this upcoming season to be predominantly about football. And whether Caden Salter can move the needle for CU, pick up at least where Shador left off, if not move it forward a little bit. And notice I say Caden Salter because he's going to be the starting quarterback. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do this where I entertain that there's a quarterback competition. Caden Salter's the starter. Juju Lewis is the future, 100%. And if things go sideways, expect to see him. But I would be shocked if Caden Salter, the transfer from Liberty, is not the starting quarterback. But that's fine. Broncos had that to be able to do that for years. Why can't CU dabble in the faux quarterback competition business? But it's just another year of hitting the transfer portal hard. This is a team that's mostly built through the portal. How's that going to work? You're moving on from two of the, and I'm not getting into the jersey retirement things, but statistically, two of the more talented and accomplished players in CU football history. You're moving on from those guys. What's it look like? It's very much football. Football in Boulder. And not all of this other stuff. Now, I will say, the minute that either CU stumbles out of the gate or picks off a massive win, then it's going to get out of control, especially if they lose. I think given all the change, I think these Big 12 coaches are keeping expectations at a decent level for CU. If they stumble out of the gate, if they can't bank on a strong non-conference like they've been able to, then the knives will come out and everything. It doesn't take much to flip it, but right now it's just very much about how good will the CU Buffs be in football this year. And given the last 2 years, I feel like that's kind of a refreshing change of pace. First things first, though, Deion's got to get healthy. Hope he does very soon. 719-24-7-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. This Saturday night, Switchbacks FC host Oakland Roots. Gates open at 6 p.m. The first 2,000 fans through the gates will get a limited edition Switchbacks canvas bag powered by Percheron, and then stick around after the match to experience a father-approved fireworks show, which probably the music is how I guess. I don't know. I mean, I'm a dad. I don't know what that would look like. I think it would be music that I would like. I don't know. Stick around to find out. That's this Saturday night. How about a pair of tickets? You could take your dad. You could have your son or daughter take you. You can take your husband. Take your buddy who's also a dad. Just suggestions. That's all. 13th texter to text Switchbacks in your name to 719-24-7. 1313 will get a pair of tickets to Saturday's Switchbacks Roots matchup. And if you do not win, or you need more than 2 tickets, because I'm only giving away 2, switchbacksfc.com. Almost sold out, by the way. I bet when I go to training this week, I'll hear that it's sold out. So act quickly. So we'll get back to the biggest story of Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final coming up after the top of the hour. But there is a longer-term story at play here, and that is which team will back up the Brinks truck for Sam Bennett. Scored again last night, and he is having a Conn Smythe-worthy playoff run. And it could very well come down to, who wins, Florida or Edmonton. And if Florida wins, Sam Bennett will get the Conn Smythe. If Edmonton wins, probably Leon Draisaitl, I think, would be it. But as you found out last year, they will do everything they can to make Connor McDavid. Not that he didn't deserve credit for the Oilers coming back, but I had a little bit of an issue with him being the Conn Smythe winner. At any rate, Sam Bennett is having an epic playoff run. And there's been a lot of debate on whether he is worth significant money. And as I'm listening to these debates and reading things on social media, this is the second coming of Nazem Kadri, circa 2022. Now, it's flipped, because if you recall, Nazem Kadri missed some time during that Stanley Cup run. He didn't actually produce that much for the Avalanche during the playoffs. In fact, they beat Edmonton without him. But he had such a phenomenal regular season that he was in line for a huge payday. Sam Bennett's the reverse. Like, the way Sam Bennett is going, if this playoff was extended magically by like 2 more rounds, he might exceed his regular season production just in the playoffs alone. But therein lies what you have to weigh if you're a team that's going to sign him. And I think you should be glad, if you're an Avalanche fan, that the Avs got the Brock Nelson deal done, or else they might have to dabble in the Sam Bennett market. Now they don't have to. Now, Nazem Kadri had every excuse in the world for not producing in the playoffs. Again, he missed an entire round. It's not like that was a warning sign. But Nazem Kadri during the regular season was a form of Nazem Kadri we have never seen before. Like Sam Bennett in these playoffs. We've never seen Sam Bennett produce like this in the postseason. And I got to imagine in Florida, they're going to have many of the same discussions that you and I had a few years ago about the viability of paying Nazem Kadri top dollar when you had other players like at the time, Valeri Nichushkin, Josh Manson, like it was basically 3 or 1. You want to bring back these 3 guys or you want to bring back Nazem Kadri? I don't blame the Avalanche. I think the Avalanche made the right decision. The problem is you have to execute afterwards. Right? You can have a good plan, but if you don't execute it, that becomes a problem. And that's what happened to the Colorado Avalanche. I think they made the right call. They said, we want to sign these multiple players over here rather than just Nazem Kadri. I think they were rightly a little bit leery of, the production that Nazem Kadri had. Could this be kind of an outlier of a year? I think their thought process was sound, but when you follow it up with, JT Compher, Ryan Johansson, Casey Mittelstadt, like that's where things get sideways, and that's where it looks like ultimately a poor decision. Florida's going to have the same deal with Sam Bennett. It is reasonable to think that no team that signed Sam Bennett will get this level of production in their next postseason. It's reasonable. Sam Bennett is how do I put this? He's as third line, a second line center as you can get, meaning he's not the prototypical high point total guy as a second line center. He's productive, but then he also brings kind of that grit and sandpaper that you normally see with a third line center, right? He's not a finesse player. So part of me feels like he's a bit of a tweener. And there's a very specific niche for him, a very specific role and type of team that I wonder if his suitors are going to be, lined up around the block. I feel like his market's not going to be huge. But for a team like, let's say, Toronto, I think Sam Bennett is exactly what they need. Mitch Marner goes, bring in Sam Bennett. I think that makes all the sense in the world for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And they're still talented enough that they don't need to rely on Sam Bennett's production, but they desperately need what Sam Bennett does for the Florida Panthers. So I get a Toronto signing him. I don't know if a team like, Buffalo, for instance, signs Sam Bennett to kind of turn them around, to be the catalyst for them to take the next step and finally get back in the postseason. I don't see Sam Bennett providing that. It's a contending team that needs a little bit more physicality. Like kind of the Avalanche would have been. And that's why I say, be glad that the Avs got the deal done with Brock Nelson, because they would kind of need what Sam Bennett brings to the table. Because we've let go of the idea that any second line center for the Avs is ever going to be as productive as Nazem Kadri. What you loved most about Nazem Kadri was his blend of production, but also the physicality, also the ability to get under the opponent's skin. Sam Bennett fits that mold perfectly, but the Avs are not in a situation where they can afford to pay what Sam Bennett might fetch on the open market. Sam Bennett would be an amazing fit with the Avalanche. They don't have to worry about it. But I could see the same kind of scenario playing out in Florida the way it did here, where you're going, do we sign Sam Bennett or do we sign these 3 other players? Now, none of them are maybe as good as Sam Bennett, but they're 3 guys And we like all three. We'll see what happens. Paul Maurice was asked by Jackie Redmond last night about Sam Bennett and the goal he scored. And then, of course, Jackie Redmond had to throw this in there about his impending payday. And Paul Maurice was in peak Paul Maurice form, even in the middle of a Stanley Cup final game.
I don't think his agent's going to have to work that hard this summer, but I'll move on.
A horrible attitude. I think he's got bubonic plague.
I see what you're doing.
Denang fever. He's got a whole bunch of things. We're not sure he can be cured.
Paul Maurice, man. He's why, and I'll get into this after the top of the hour in regards to Edmonton trying to cosplay as the Florida Panthers last night. But I think Paul Maurice is what makes Florida, who dabbles in the goonery, likable. Him being in many ways the face of the team, the mouthpiece of the team, I think that compensates for some of the stuff that Evander Kane was complaining that they were doing last night, just like Edmonton. Yeah, I don't think it's going to work, Paul Maurice. I think Sam Bennett's going to get paid. 719-247-1313. Speaking of Game 3, we'll talk about that. The Broncos' new addition as well here on Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in Drive Time Sports. As the man said, good to have you, whether you're listening to the show on air, online, or through the app. Highly recommend the app. It's free to use, free to download. No nickel and diming with that fine piece of technology. Or maybe you're watching the show on our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300. Your participation, not mandatory, but always welcome. 719-247-1313. You can call or text it in or tweet at me at Gingerly Tweets. If you're new to the program, we do a little thing at the beginning of the third hour of the show where we look at the most important stories and the ones we've been talking about today, and we call it What's Driving the Show. Here we go. All right, we start story number one. Dobbins, a Bronco after all.
It's to Dobbins, trying to stretch it. He's got the corner. Dobbins, left sideline, 30, 20, one man to beat. Cuts inside 10, 5, flips into the end zone. Touchdown, Chargers.
KYSR on the call. J.K. Dobbins visited Denver, left without a contract. And today, Tom Pelissero reporting, no, he's signing a deal. 1 year, $5.2 million-ish. Of course, it's loaded with incentives. When I look at the contract, I say the Broncos could cut him tomorrow and it would be no problem. And again, it just, every time I brought up J.K. Dobbins, I've just kept hammering the point. There's no risk here. There's no downside. I don't understand why people are making it out to be maybe a negative. Like if Audric Estime, because that's mostly what's in the lens, oh, you got all these young running backs and he's going to take away reps. And the Broncos made the playoffs last year. Like they're at a different level now. They still got to develop young guys, but come on now. They got to win football games. Can you imagine the conversation? Of course you can. What it will be like if the Broncos take a significant step back this year because they were waiting on Audric Estime to carry their mediocre run game? Like, if Audric Estime is who Sean Payton thinks he is, one, he probably doesn't sign J.K. Dobbins. Or maybe Sean Payton knows who Audric Estime is. Let me phrase it this way. If Audric Estime was what many Broncos fans thought he was, Sean Payton wouldn't be signing J.K. Dobbins. He's bringing some things to the table that add to the room, along with Estime and R.J. Harvey, specifically pass blocking. But also, yeah, maybe he beats them out. I look at it and say he's the best running back the Broncos have right now. So if I'm Sean Payton, I am not. Last year maybe is a different year where I wanted to give some young guys a try. Now it's like he's made the entire identity of this football team the team that's going to finally dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs atop the AFC West. Did you forget that? Because I sure as heck didn't. Saying after they got smoked by Buffalo that they felt like they were going to win next week if they had gotten past Buffalo, which is easy to say. Like, they've graduated here. Now there are real expectations. They got to win football games. They're not a nice story anymore. And if J.K. Dobbins can either bring certain skills that the running back room doesn't have or just be flat out better than what they have, I think if you're a Broncos fan, you should be all for that. Now, I think the more realistic thought process behind this is kind of in line with what Sean Payton did a lot of last year, which is winning in the margins. Right? But in order to win in the margins, you got to shrink those margins. So the way I look at it more realistically than this puts the Broncos over the top in, Santa Clara, here we come. I think Super Bowl's in San Francisco, isn't it? It's not about that, but it's about they've upgraded safety with Talanoa Hufanga. They've upgraded inside linebacker with Dre Greenlaw. They've upgraded the secondary at the cornerback position with Jahdae Barron. They've upgraded in a massive way the tight end room with the addition of Evan Ingram. Now they're adding J.K. Dobbins to the mix. That is probably better than anybody else the Broncos currently have on the roster. And you add all of that improvement up, and maybe that's enough to get above L.A. in the division. And maybe that's enough to fend off, Pittsburgh or Cincinnati as the 5th seed. Maybe they get the top wild card spot. And with the top wild card spot, you get probably a road game against the winner of the AFC South, which is absolutely dreadful. Now, it didn't work out for the Chargers last year, so there's no guarantee, but where the Broncos are at right now, if progress is winning a playoff game, you got to draw the AFC South. You can't go into Arrowhead or Baltimore or Buffalo and expect to get a win. And that's just life in the AFC, right? You got 3 of the best quarterbacks on planet Earth, 3 of the best teams in the NFL in your conference. There's not a lot of other spots available. But if with all of this little improvements at all these different positions with these veterans that Champagne has brought in, does that all add up to 1 game? 2 games? Or I should say 1 win, 2 wins more? And if that's the case, now you're looking at the top wild card spot. And now you got a real shot going into Houston, Jacksonville, Indy, doesn't matter. I think you would give the Broncos a shot against any team in the AFC South in a playoff game. And I think that's more the reasonable vision rather than all of these guys are now going to take the Broncos from the 7th seed to the number 1 seed. We're still building here. I get it. People are getting excited. People want to jump the gun a little bit. Next year is the year where I'll be right in line, where we're going to be talking big about what the Broncos should be. This year's still, more than anything else, development of Bo Nix. J.K. Dobbins helps in that regard. But just these little improvements here and there, maybe you add it all up at the end, and the Broncos are in a much better spot going into the postseason than they were a year ago. I think that's the more reasonable vision. We'll see if this all plays out because J.K. Dobbins is in the same boat as Ingram and Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw. Part of the reason that they were available for the Denver Broncos is they weren't available towards the end of their careers in other places. So if they're all healthy, if they're all hitting, then Broncos have some ground they might be able to make up. But I think, again, no downside. I do not care one iota about the reps that Audric Estime. I have nothing against Audric Estime. But they were a dreadful running back room last year. They just were. Okay, if you got a chance to improve it and you can sign a guy on a no-risk 1-year, $5 million deal, you do it. I was actually more surprised they let him leave Denver without a contract than the fact they're signing him today. To me, it's a no-brainer. Here's story number 2.
Pass for right, Hernandez scores a pretty power play goal.
Panthers.
Sportsnet Canada on the call. Last night was an absolute beatdown. Florida Panthers 6, Edmonton Oilers 1. The Panthers now 2-1 up in the Stanley Cup final, but I hesitate to call that a game last night because what it devolved into was a farce. The Edmonton Oilers turned that game into an absolute farce last night. And Chris Knobloch talked about it after the game. At 3-1, they kind of knew they weren't going to come back. So we can debate the merits of that when you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, a 2-goal lead early in the second period, or 2-goal deficit early in the second period. It shouldn't be a death sentence. That's kind of a loser mentality if I'm being honest about it. But if you decided at some point you weren't going to win the game, there is a better alternative than just becoming out-and-out goons. Because it doesn't suit you. You're not good at this. And what we got instead of some of the subtle goonery, like an extra shot at the end of a play or something like that, we got one player holding Matthew Tkachuk's arms against his body so Jake Wallman can wail on him. We see Jake Wallman squirting water at the Panthers bench and getting some on the in-between glass announcer, Brian Boucher. Like, the Edmonton Oilers should be actually quite embarrassed with their performance last night. But not even the 6-1. I mean, that you could characterize as embarrassing. The reason why it got to 6-1 is not because Florida had the train rolling down the tracks and Edmonton could do nothing about that. It was at 3-1. They just decided they wanted to try and beat up the Florida Panthers. That's why that game got out of hand. And Edmonton, that's not who they are. And it's abundantly clear. You watch it. It's not natural. It's not the subtle art of goonery that we hockey fans come to appreciate. That's what Florida does. Edmonton, it seems so out of character. They're not subtle about it. They look like they're just taking cheap shots. They look like poor sports and losers when they do that. Like, play to your strengths. You got to be a little bit physical in the playoffs. I understand that. But play to your strengths. We have McDavid, we have Draisaitl. No lead is safe against us. And Edmonton just folded up shop and then decided to start throwing punches at Florida, playing right into their hands. So the question becomes for tomorrow night, is this just about game 3 or is this about the entire series? Did they just melt down last night or did they melt down to the point that this series we're going to look back on and say it was over in game 3? Not a good look from the Edmonton Oilers. You don't do this well. Stop trying. Story number 3 today is that Deion Sanders is dealing with some health issues. His son, Deion Jr., was on YouTube saying he's feeling, I want to get the quote exactly right, feeling well. He's in Texas right now, not in Boulder. He's away from the team right now. And Deion Jr. says that Deion Sr. will tell us all soon enough what he's dealing with and what he's been going through. Obviously, Deion Sanders has had his health scares in the past, and he has battled through those to his credit. And it's good to hear that it seems like he's doing the same here. What is it? Is it something that we already know that Deion's dealt with in the past, or is it something new? Obviously, the football takes a back seat, but to bring football into it for just a moment, the Buffs, it would be better for them to have Deion fully healthy on the sidelines. from a human factor, but also the football factor. This is a big year for CU football. You'd love to see Deion Sanders roaming the sideline for it. So, seems like pretty good news, all things considered, and hopefully Deion Sanders is back in Boulder sooner rather than later. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. 719-247-1313. We'll continue with Drive Time Sports after this. Treat your dad to a $5,000 basement, barbecue, or backyard upgrade. What would your pop choose? A brand spanking new grill area, all new lawn care equipment, an enormous flat screen TV for the old man cave? Pop gets to pick. Head to extrasports1300.com to enter this national contest for a chance at $5,000 for your top pop, sponsored locally by Bullseye Plumbing, Heating, and Air. You've scored a bullseye, the best you can get. By the way, I was late to announce this. Sorry for those of you who entered. Jim is the winner of the pair of tickets today to the Switchbacks game on Saturday. So sorry that I kept many of you waiting. I just, hosting a talk show here. Don't have a producer. I would task a producer to do that kind of thing. But anyway, Jim was our 13th texter, and he'll win a pair of tickets to see the Switchbacks take on Oakland Roots on Saturday. More chances for you to win as the week progresses. Do not fret. Aaron Rodgers, first appearance wearing Steelers paraphernalia today. As always, interesting with some of his quotes. First he said that he was either going to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers or he's going to retire. Believe what you want. The thought was he was holding out hope that Minnesota, who is a better team on paper than Pittsburgh, would come calling, but they didn't. But Aaron Rodgers says today it was either Pittsburgh or no one. As far as why he's playing, I don't need it for my ego. I don't need it to keep playing. A lot of decisions that I've made over my career in life from strictly the ego. This guy reads Ryan Holiday, I promise you. The ego? Yeah, that's how we talk when we read Ryan Holiday. Even if they turn out well, are always unfulfilling, but the decisions made from the soul are usually pretty fulfilling. By the way, he got married. Didn't tell anyone. Rude. None of us were invited to his wedding, but he was married. I don't want to get too existential here, but it is Aaron Rodgers, so I guess that's in play here. This isn't. I think this is about just ending things on the right note. Okay, this guy in his personal life, some of his exes have come out and said some pretty negative things about him and who he is and how their relationship was. Obviously, the way things ended in Green Bay, some of the stuff that happened in New York, for a long time, Aaron Rodgers has been kind of the ringleader of his own circus, hasn't always gone along with everybody. To me, if I'm going to read maybe too much into it, this is just about, ending his NFL career on a better note. Not that this has to end the way that John Elway's career did, or even Peyton Manning's. But just if that would have been it for Aaron Rodgers. Same as if Shailene Woodley would have been his last relationship. The view of Aaron Rodgers wouldn't have been great. Right? But he's pressing on in both his personal and his work life and is saying, like, I want it to end a little bit better. Not in terms of another MVP, not in terms of another championship necessarily, although, of course, he's going there to try and win a Super Bowl for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But just, I think for somebody who pretends like he doesn't care what people say, I think he cares what people say. At least he hears it. And I got to imagine there's a critical mass where you're getting all this negativity and all these things said about you. And you're like, you know what? I'd like to change the narrative a little bit. I think that's what's behind it for Aaron Rodgers. Now, let's not act like he'll be a completely changed man, right? Peyton Manning has a massive ego, right? It's just that he didn't let it hinder his relationships with teams, fans, and all that. But I think it's just about ending on a higher note. And maybe a season, and maybe Pittsburgh, I know, they needed a quarterback. It was really the only destination. But given what that organization is, like just some, stability, chance for there to be a little less drama, a little less fanfare around him. I know they go crazy in Pittsburgh, and it's not like the Steelers aren't going to be one of the more talked about teams, but Pittsburgh versus New York. Right? I think this is a better spot for Aaron Rodgers to kind of close out his career. And I think it will be less of the other stuff. Have you noticed that it's actually already been less of the other stuff? Like you've had to go hunting for, some of Aaron Rodgers', we'll call it what it is, whacked out views on the world. He hasn't been as public about it. Which it's not that he's not allowed to be public with it. Everybody is allowed to be public with their opinions. But just knowing the pushback it would get, maybe doesn't feel like he needs to be beating people over the head with his belief system. In many ways, I do think that Pittsburgh is getting a different Aaron Rodgers. But they might also be getting an Aaron Rodgers that is different on the football field, meaning not what he was and not the guy that's going to ultimately deliver what Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking for. It will be a nice change of pace if Aaron Rodgers is a little more introspective, a little bit less boisterous about things, a little bit more stick to football, all that kind of stuff. And getting married certainly does that, right? Settles you down a little bit. And I legitimately mean this, like, good for him. Like, I don't hate the guy. I disagree with some of the stuff that he says, and I think he's been kind of a net negative for the franchises he's played for over the last few years. But I'm glad. Like, I'm glad that he seems to be content and happy, and he can just focus on ball. Aaron Rodgers just playing ball is preferred over Aaron Rodgers on the Joe Rogan podcast. So Pittsburgh might be getting a different Aaron Rodgers in that way, but what I would fear if I'm a Steeler fan is that they're also getting him very different than what he was, which was a multiple-time MVP and a Super Bowl winning quarterback. 719-24-7, 1313. Meanwhile, and just get used to this, because there is a group of teams that, along with the Broncos, I'm always going to keep an eye on. Kansas City, not just because of why I normally keep an eye on Kansas City, but obviously that's who Denver's trying to go through. The Chargers, with all due respect, the way I look at the Raiders is they are like the Giants or any other team. They're on their schedule. They happen to be on there twice. I don't look at this Raiders team in the same way I look at the Chargers or the Broncos. So it's the Chargers, the Chiefs, Bengals, and Steelers. Because I feel like that's the groups that are going to be fighting this thing out this upcoming season. That the Broncos, when they fall short of the division, are now going to be battling with Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and LA for the final playoff spots and also playoff positioning. So one eye is going to be on what happens in Pittsburgh, what happens in Cincinnati, and what happens in LA. To that end, it would not hurt the Broncos' chances if one of those teams was a bit of a dumpster fire, just like clear the deck a little bit here. Cincinnati is trending in that direction. Trey Hendrickson is holding out. Not a massive deal. TJ Watt's holding out Pittsburgh. Let's not, hold one guy to one standard and one to the other. Trey Hendrickson is in a contract dispute. He's holding out just like TJ Watt is. The issue is really with Shamar Stewart. Like, I thought we moved past all this where rookies would hold out. Like, that went the way of Sam Bradford. Like, everything is slotted. Now, it should be the easiest thing in the world to get your rookie first-round pick to agree to a deal. It really should be. But it's not, because apparently the Bengals are trying to put in protections for themselves that Stewart's agent is not keen on. So now Stewart is also holding out. As a rookie, when's the last time we had a rookie holdout? He's holding out as a rookie. So you have Trey Hendrickson and maybe the guy who will eventually replace Hendrickson, but for now you hope to play with Hendrickson, both holding out. And everything I've seen and read says that this is Bengals being Bengals. That they are doing things they don't have to do. They're just doing it because they're cheap or they're poorly run. And this brings up what has happened with the Knicks. Again, the Bengals are another great example. You get Joe Burrow, you get Jamar Chase, and everyone thinks all of a sudden the Cincinnati Bengals are a well-functioning organization, and they are not. They are still a poorly run franchise. They are still cheap as all get out, and they are still not a great franchise to be a part of. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase having to go there because they were drafted by them does not change that. So it's only a matter of time before we get back to our normally scheduled programming of, the Bengals are still a mess. Cool. Glad to know that. Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart, who are, by the way, the only things keeping the Bengals from being somehow even worse defensively than they were this past year, which I thought was almost impossible. So as you keep an eye on what's going on throughout the NFL landscape, you have your team and you're like, okay, I think this is what my team's going to do this year. Who are the other teams that are battling for that same spot? With the Broncos, it's LA, it's Pittsburgh, and it's Cincinnati. I'm not hearing a peep out of LA. I don't even know what's going on with the Chargers right now. Pittsburgh brings in Aaron Rodgers, and Cincinnati can't figure out how to get normal NFL business done. So, meanwhile, the Broncos are adding a lot of quality veterans to their roster. So if we did like a power rankings, just in terms of where the needle is pointed. I don't think that today the Broncos are a better team than the Chargers. But like they're adding, don't really hear the Chargers doing much. Pittsburgh got Aaron Rodgers. I think that could move the needle for them. Maybe the Steelers are in front of the Broncos in terms of the news cycle. And then there's the Chargers who we don't hear anything out of, and they beat the Bengals because the Bengals are only making negative headlines. But if one of these teams, if Aaron Rodgers was completely washed, or the Cincinnati Bengals could not get any quality defensive player to play for them this year, those would be positive developments for the Denver Broncos. And by the way, better things to root for than injury. Don't root for injuries, but you can root for people being washed or people dragging a contract holdout into the season, which, by the way, the Broncos get the Bengals fairly early on in the season. Something we'll monitor as the summer moves along. 719-247-1313. Back to wrap up the show after this. The 45th U.S. Senior Open is returning to the Broadmoor June 26th through the 29th. Get your tickets to see the legends of the game compete on, and this is a completely non-biased take, one of the most beautiful courses you will find anywhere. USSeniorOpen.com is where you go to do that. Couple of remaining items of business. This is where we really get all TMZ. Did you see what happened with DeMarcus Cousins in Puerto Rico? So, fun fact that has very little to nothing to do with the story. I was in that arena during Thanksgiving weekend, broadcasting Air Force women's basketball. They played in that arena. And when I was there in talking with some of the people at the arena, some of my Uber drivers while I was in Puerto Rico, I realized, and I didn't know this, that a lot of NBA players that are either looking for gainful employment or are done from the NBA and just looking to play some more ball and get some money, go to Puerto Rico. I had no idea about this basketball ecosystem that was going on in Puerto Rico. And one of the players that I talked about with one of my Uber drivers was DeMarcus Cousins. And if you know anything about me, you know that I have long been a proponent of DeMarcus Cousins. And I always felt like he was the perfect guy to back up Nikola Jokic. And finally, for one shining moment, that was the case. And then DeMarcus Cousins, which he does in so many places, including now Puerto Rico, takes a flamethrower to his relationship with management, coaching, teammates, fans. Well, the fans might be a new one. But anyway, so I just found it funny when I got sent the video last night. I was like, oh, I was there. Not at the same time DeMarcus Cousins was there, and it's probably a good thing because it got a little bit out of hand last night. So DeMarcus Cousins gets into it, arguing with a fan courtside. Okay? It happens, right? Unfortunate, but some people pay money for those seats and they feel like they are entitled to be able to say things. So right there, I side with DeMarcus Cousins because fans can be morons and these players should not have to deal with terrible things being said to them. I don't know what the guy said, but it elicited quite the reaction, so I'm guessing it wasn't super nice. Well, then DeMarcus Cousins starts to go at him, and then he gets ejected from the game. He, goes after the guy, grabs him and gets into it, and he's being escorted out. He gets ejected, obviously, gets escorted out. He's going down the tunnel. And somebody throws popcorn on him. This is the Puerto Rican version of the Malice at the Palace getting ready to happen. DeMarcus Cousins grabs a fan. Thankfully, that didn't escalate. And then he's walking down the tunnel. Someone throws things at him, and he turns, and he's ready to probably go into the stands, Ron Artest style, and Steven Jackson. They were getting ready to have a Malice at the Palace, if not for the police that were escorting him out. They basically tackled DeMarcus Cousins. Wild scene. And just for the record, it's not okay to say terrible things to a professional athlete or any athlete. Just watch. You can boo or you can make a little subtle jab, but don't say terrible things. Now, that's where I will side with DeMarcus Cousins. As short-tempered as DeMarcus Cousins is, I'm sure his initial reaction to get into it with the fan, not grab him, but get into it with him verbally, I'm sure he was justified. I'm sure he was provoked. But the line is right there. You're up against the line. Don't cross it. And he did. No matter what they're saying to you, you can't grab them. You can't try to fight them. That's where now you become the person in the wrong. And again, you go to the tunnel. Throwing something at somebody, not okay. Hopefully the authorities find them, kick them out, ban them forever, all that kind of stuff. But if you're DeMarcus Cousins, unfortunately, I mean, tell that person to go to Hades or whatever you want to do, but don't try to go up there and fight them. Thankfully, the police were there to stop it, which, by the way, on a semi-lighter note, because nothing did serious happen, so we can kind of make a little bit light of it. Ron Artest might be crazy, but can you imagine if DeMarcus Cousins was crawling into the stands after you? Like, DeMarcus Cousins is a monster. That could have gotten really ugly. So, any chance of DeMarcus Cousins coming back stateside? I don't know that they existed, but they're certainly zero now. Go Vaqueros. Or the Osos. I believe they were playing, because I'm now a Puerto Rican basketball aficionado. Believe they're at the Osos Arena. Or they're at the Vaqueros Arena. I guess I don't know. But I was at that. I remember. I saw the video. I was like, I was there. So that's fun. Speaking of athletes behaving badly, allegedly, Stephon Diggs was at the first day of mandatory minicamp. And he was asked about a little video that had been going around where he was on a boat with his significant other, which, by the way, good for Stephon Diggs. Congratulations on that. But there were some things going on the boat and some substances that were being called into question. And I love Stephon Diggs' reaction or answer to all of this. I want to be as candid with you as possible, but I kind of have a thing where I don't talk about my personal life with people I don't know personally. Okay. There is a line in this regard too. When you are being filmed and the video is going viral and you are on social media, it's your personal life, but it's not really. Your personal life has become public. So, like, well, I don't really talk about things in my personal life. Like, it's not behind closed doors. Like, we all saw it. You don't think that you have to at least speak to the substance? I don't care about the other women on the boat. That's between you and Cardi B. Okay? That's not what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in, what people are interested in more than anything else, is this powder that you are apparently passing around. That might be a problem. And to at least address that part of it, no one's asking to get into the salacious details of your relationship with Cardi B. That can stay personal, even though we saw that on social media too. But like, just this thing that might be drugs, like, can you at least speak to that? No, it's personal life. Okay. Such a convenient thing to say. It's personal. All right. The particulars are all internal. Yeah, there's something more to this. Again, this is where I put in the caveat, not a journalist, talk show host, closer to entertainer than journalist. Well, you can argue that I'm not particularly close to either one, but my job description, I am closer to the entertainment side of the business than I am the journalism side. So let me wildly speculate. either that powder is what we think it is, or there's more to the story that maybe the Patriots know and you and I don't. I 100% think that's the case. The particulars are internal. If it wasn't drugs, then just say that. That's all we're looking for. We're not looking for anything with any of the women on the boat. Are you passing around drugs? That was the question. Feel like you can answer at least that, but you didn't. Court of public opinion. Go ahead and rule on that one. See, the Broncos are like not even 10th on the list of the most significant news items of the day at mandatory minicamp. Aaron Rodgers speaking, Stephon Diggs talking about the boat party. And what is it with the NFL, their players and boat parties? Feel like we've had a few boat-related news stories over the years in the NFL. Not so much in baseball. Even one as innocuous as Tom Brady being super drunk on a boat. Like, there was always an NFL story about a boat. So, I don't know. I'll let the journalists in the greater Boston area try to crack that case, but that's what Stephon Diggs said today. It's personal. Okay. Well, it was all over social media, so I don't know how personal it is anymore. And there we go. That concludes the TMZ portion of the program. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed the program overall. Tomorrow, busy day. Jay Paterno, son of Coach Paterno, obviously. He's a trustee at Penn State. He wrote a new book about the direction that college athletics is going. I'll have him on the show. Jay Ritchie will join me. We'll talk some U.S. Open. We'll have some fun with that. And, you'll hear from plenty of members of the Broncos as well. Big show coming up tomorrow. Enjoy your evening, and we'll talk tomorrow. I already said that.